Welcome, Anthony. I know these guys have a lot of questions for you.
Hey, Anthony, how you doing today, bud?
What's up, guys? Happy to be back.
Anthony, big game today. Tomorrow against Penn State on the road. Kind of give me first of your expectations going into the game, and kind of recap the season. I know the Michigan State game was a big letdown, a 30-14 lead. They blew it. But what's the mindset of the team going into Saturday? They obviously have to take care of business. But where does this leave Jim Harbaugh? This is a must-win game. I don't see how he shows up next year, even if he beats Ohio State. But with losses to Michigan State and Penn State, again, I think he needs to walk in on November 27th, 10-1, or he's going to be out of a job.
Yeah, I don't think he'll be out of a job, but it's certainly we'll kind of be spinning our wheels here, right? It'll be year 7. It's another 9-3, 10-2 type thing. Saturday is the latest, quote unquote, biggest game of the Jim Harbaugh era until they win and the goalposts move, because that's usually how it goes. But yeah, they got to get this one on Saturday. By dropping, regardless of, I'm not going to do the officiating thing. By dropping the game that they did at Michigan State, you had a 16-point lead. Your margin of error the rest of the season is all but gone. I don't personally expect them to beat Ohio State, but you have to go in that game 10-1. You have to. The expectation, the baseline expectation at the University of Michigan should be that last Saturday in November you're playing for a Big Ten East championship, and they're the line that they'll keep pointing to, the sign they'll keep pointing to is, goals are still ahead of us despite the loss to Michigan State, and that's true, but they don't completely control their own destiny. So the only thing that you can do is win, and then see what else happens there. Still a lot to sort out on the field. Michigan State and Ohio State still have to play. Michigan State plays the same 3 teams to end the year that Michigan does. So we'll see what happens. We saw what the playoff committee thought of it. Objectively speaking, kind of hilarious. Just given, you guys know you're in the debate game. It's perfect for these types of formats. But it's a big game for them. Penn State is, they're a 3-loss team, but you kind of put an asterisk next to that because Sean Clifford wasn't healthy for a couple of those games. You lose a tough one at Iowa. They lost in 9 overtimes, quote unquote, to Illinois. So, but this is a very talented team. NFL guys all over their defense. Jahan Dotson, Parker Washington, 2 really good wide receivers. Michigan rightfully reset itself last week. They had a players-only meeting after the Michigan State game to go, hey, listen, we cannot fold like we have in recent seasons after losing a tough game like that. So I do feel like they're refocused. I feel like matchup-wise, which I'm sure we can kind of get into here, I feel like they match up pretty well in this game at Penn State. And probably the biggest thing for them is they don't have to go there and play at night. They're playing a noon kickoff at Penn State, which they haven't done since 2015, which was the last time they won at Penn State. So I think if you're a Michigan fan or someone that's looking to make a pick in this game, I lead Michigan in this matchup, but it will be it's going to be a tough, hard-fought game like most of them are.
So you mentioned while you were talking about the goalpost moving for Harbaugh, and that's one thing that, I'm not a Michigan fan. I'm not a Michigan State fan. I went to University of Detroit. We don't even have a football team. So I have nothing in this game. But to me, it just seems that Harbaugh is judged so unfairly sometimes. I mean, the guy's got 1 loss on the season on the road to, at that time, a top 10 ranked team, top 5 ranked team. And people are calling for this man's job, and I get it. We can look at the years past, but I want to focus on what's in front of me, and I want to focus on the team that he's playing with right now. They have 1 loss and control their destiny to where they could compete for a national championship. On what planet is that not acceptable?
At the University of Michigan, with Michigan fans. No,
who do they think they are?
Well, they're delusional. That's the problem with Michigan
well,
fans.
It's one of those things where I think a lot of the discourse and a lot of the debates on what this team is or what they might, because a lot of it's predictive, right? Like, no, people don't expect them to beat Ohio State. So what it will be is year 7 where you haven't beaten, you didn't beat either of your rivals. Yeah, you won 10 games, but in a lot of people's minds, you will have won 10 games without, accomplishing the rivalry win. You're not Indianapolis playing for a Big Ten championship. So it's like it rings empty for a lot of people. So like I get it, I understand it. They're like I said, I personally don't expect them to beat Ohio State, but it's just one of those things where it's seven years now. To their credit, Michigan, they said, hey, Jim Harbaugh, if you want to come back, you got to come back at $4 million. And you want to make the rest of that money you were making before, go win these games. Go to Indy, beat Ohio State, do those types of things. So, I can't say that that's added. Everyone's on notice there. But again, you go through another season where you don't get either of those things done. I understand why that would ring hollow to a lot of people. Michigan with, it's less about, like, everyone has an Ohio State problem, right? To me, you're the University of Michigan. Why do you have a Michigan State problem? Why do you have a Penn State problem? Why do you have a Wisconsin problem? The numbers at this point, when you're you're 6, 7, almost 7 years into this thing, when you are Jim Harbaugh and you have a record of, I believe it's 20-21 against teams over 500, like that's not in a vacuum. That's over 7 years of playing football games. So I totally get it. It always comes with the heeding the warning that the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Like, look at Nebraska after Bo Pelini. Look at USC, Texas, Tennessee, Florida, Florida State. There's a lot of these other quote-unquote blue blood programs that aren't where they're quote-unquote supposed to be, that as a Michigan fan, you feel pretty good about where the state of your program is compared to that. But it's still, like I said, it's not enough. At some point, you would think, given 7 years of football, you would even just luck into one of these big wins at one point, and it hasn't happened. And normally, it's because, I think what bothers Michigan fans the most about Harbaugh under any of the coaching staffs he's had is that they don't put games away. You go back a couple weeks ago, I went back and charted a lot of these, like 2015 Michigan State, a couple of those Ohio State games, Iowa 2016. Michigan State a couple weeks ago, like what you see them do at the end of the games, it's like punt, turnover on downs, interception, 30 yards of total offense. Like, those are the types of things late in games that I think drive Michigan fans crazy. And in the here and now in college football, where you just have to keep scoring, they don't do that enough. They're a little conservative with leads, and that's, again, I think if you're skeptical that a Jim Harbaugh team can do something in a big situation, you have plenty of data in your favor that suggests that you're in the right there.
Anthony, I could make the argument that this offseason, when they restructured his deal and he brought on, 10, 15 assistants really under, I want to say, the age of 45, that the program looks like it's in a better place. It really reminds me of his first 2-3 years where you're like, oh my goodness, they're going to do it. Granted, the failure to beat the rivals, failure to win the big games. But I'm looking at Jim Harbaugh overall. He wasn't brought here to do what essentially most Michigan coaches have done throughout the program's history, which is, we win 9-10 games, maybe beat Ohio State, maybe beat Michigan State. Like, this program was never a national powerhouse, and I think that's what frustrates me the most is the expectation is we need to be a national powerhouse. The problem is you never were one, and I think Harbaugh has done what every Michigan coach has done. The problem is he wasn't brought here to do that. He was brought here to beat Ohio State, beat Michigan State, beat Penn State, beat Iowa, and go to a Big Ten championship multiple times. Get to a college football playoffs every other year, every 3 years even. It doesn't need to be every year, but Jesus Christ, we're in year 7. I really think he needs to put on the pressure and say, hey, we are not losing another game. We're going to Indy. We're capturing a Big Ten title, and I got to get that momentum because you're not going to be able to out-recruit all these SEC teams. You're not going to be able to out-recruit Ohio State unless you go and deliver results. Am I missing something, Anthony?
No, you're not. I think something that could potentially open a door for Michigan on the recruiting trail is, the name, image, and likeness stuff. I've talked about this a few times. I think on a couple other shows on here, it's, Michigan's got that place will recruit itself. They can just roll me out there as head coach, and we'll bring in a top 10, top 15 recruiting class. Which I'm not asking for that job. I don't want the stress that comes along with it. But with between the brand and the Ross Business School, like they could kind of make name, image, and likeness. They could be a leader in that, and they've moved pretty slow there too, which is not all that surprising in terms of doing things that get with the times. But yeah, at some point you just have to you got to find out a way. And the thing I'll say about Harbaugh is that again, I'll go back to he hasn't done those things that he was brought there to do, and they cut his pay 50%. So they're kind of getting I guess good returns on a reduced salary right now, but it's still not. Like I said, it's always about to me. Like, what is there? Who can you safely go out there and get that's going to elevate them? Because, like you said, I mean, I think there is this notion that Michigan can be an Alabama or an Ohio State or what have you. I think it takes a little bit of luck to do that. You got to luck yourself. You got to not only be a good program, but you have to luck into a couple of all-time great coaches in those situations. And Jim Harbaugh is a good coach. I don't think we can call him a great coach, but he's a good football coach, and he's the one thing that he does, and Michigan not winning a Big Ten title, not competing, that predates him. Lloyd Carr didn't do it the last couple of years he was there. Rich Rod certainly never did it. Again, we talk about hollow seasons, and this wasn't completely a hollow season, but 2011, Michigan goes to the Sugar Bowl, beats Ohio State, but it was a 6-6 Ohio State team that had all kinds of problems with that was between Tressel and Urban Meyer and all those things. So
wasn't it Fickell the coach at the time?
Luke Fickell was there, right?
Yep.
Something like that. Yeah, so it's like you 11-2, but you didn't win a Big Ten title. You beat Ohio State, but it was with the asterisk of it's not really what Ohio State has been. So I just look at Michigan and what ails them. It's a team and a program that has a really rough time staying out of its own way. It would be amazing if even just they cut a lot of those self-inflicted mistakes, cut them down by 25%, because it seems like in big games and big moments, they all go against them. And I think some of that, most of that is self-inflicted.
So we were talking a little bit earlier about when you have two quarterbacks, you don't have one quarterback. Why is it Jim Harbaugh, quarterback guru, coached Andrew Luck? Like, this was supposed to be the feather in his cap, but we've ran through Joe Milton. I could go through a list of about 40 quarterbacks over the course of 7 years. Why can't he just get the quarterback position right? Like, what do you feel is missing in the recruiting, in the transfer portal? Because even when we get like a Shane Morris or people coming in here that are supposed to be the next guy, they just haven't been able to perform in this offense. And you see the offense a lot of the times has guys open, just the quarterback can't get them the ball.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we could probably do a couple hours on this one. But, and Adam will come after me because this will come off as me letting Cade McNamara off the hook. But I think when I look at this year's team, Cade has played fine. Is fine going to win you Big Ten titles? Is it going to get you to the college football playoff? No, it's not going to. But I think that what we've seen out of J.J. McCarthy this year is that, this isn't a guy where Trevor Lawrence or an all-time generational type of guy is sitting there waiting to play. Now, J.J. McCarthy is insanely talented. You see it. And if you want to make the argument that maybe they sort of missed an opportunity or botched an opportunity to get him in the mix a little earlier on. I mean, when you look at how Michigan started, whatever it was, a 7-0 start, they were running the hell out of the football. And you probably could have won with that formula with J.J. McCarthy there still. But what we've seen when J.J. has come into games is that a lot of his wow plays where you see the arm talent, you see the scrambling ability, a lot of those have come on plays where it's like one of those no. Okay, well, that worked type of things. But the only way you get better is by being on the field more. And I look at Cade McNamara. He's been exactly kind of what they've asked him to be, which is this is the key here. What they've asked him to be, run the offense, gets them into the red zone. Now everything falls apart in the red zone, and you don't really have a go-to wide receiver or target down there. And to me. Again, this isn't leaving the quarterbacks or throwing them under the bus, but I think that their play calling in the red zone, I think has been a disaster. I think their wide receiver development has been not great. Losing Ronnie Bell that first week of the year doesn't help them at all. But those are two responsibilities that fall on offensive coordinator Josh Gaddis, and he's coordinated, I believe, 28 or 29 games now, and people keep saying, "Oh, wait for it." When he gets into a rhythm, you see, and but you're 30 games almost into a career, and you kind of are what you are. I think the play calling is a little too cute. I think the wide receivers don't get a ton of separation down the field. I think that's a huge issue for them. And when you look at Cade McNamara's box scores or statistics, I think a lot of times you'll see 6 yards per attempt, 6.5 yards per attempt, something around that number. I think that's really indicative of the games that are being called too. And even, it predates Cade and JJ. It's when Shea Patterson was there, the reins were kind of on him. When Joe Milton was there. Now, Joe Milton wasn't, probably the worst of that group. He wasn't quite John O'Korn, but in terms of a guy who just couldn't make the throws, he'd try to rip. You want him to rip the ball down the field, but then maybe he'd hit the popcorn vendor in the side of the head in row 6 or something. So it's just, I don't see a lot of trust in whatever quarterback is out there. And there's this narrative that, if JJ comes in, all of a sudden it's, here we go. It's time to open things up. Let it rip, kid. I just don't see a scenario where that I think the play calling probably gets more conservative if he's out there, which I just think is a detriment to them. They've missed a lot of opportunities by not, especially in that Michigan State game, by not just going for the kill shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, Anthony, I think the biggest thing I've noticed, I know JJ has clear arm talent over Cade, and I think you hit it on the head when you said fine isn't going to win you a Big Ten championship. It isn't going to get you a victory in the college football playoff, let alone a natty. And I think that's the biggest frustration. I would prefer Jim Harbaugh this year to go 9-3 with JJ McCarthy starting the entire year, than going, let's say, 10-2, or if they go 11-1, I need to shut the hell up. But the point is, if they have a similar record or even one win more, I'd prefer the kid that you think has a higher ceiling, which I think we can all agree. We think this kid can be something. I prefer him to get the reps, and I think they really botched that early on in the year when they were rolling teams. But I disagree on maybe the conservative play calling. I see JJ driving the ball on comeback routes, dig routes. These are throws that Cade, it's not that he doesn't make them. He doesn't even see the routes developing. He can't even throw the ball 12, 14, 15 yards downfield on a line to the sideline or back shoulder. I think that's the biggest really detriment to this offense is if they don't move the ball without rushing it, it's, a gadget screen. It's a little dump off to the tight end and it's like, all right, well, let's hope to God we're in a 3rd and 3 situation and we can move the chains. But I'm not seeing anything special out of the team, and I think it does take special to win a Big Ten championship, to win in the college football playoff. And if Michigan don't have that, well, then what are you working towards? Just 9-10 win seasons? Again, I think Harbaugh's a good coach, but when are you going to take the chance and become special? I think the Mike McDonald hired was absolutely great. I think he's done a much better job than Don Brown's ever done. But we see the same collapses, though, later on in the games. It can't happen. Eventually, they got to change the narrative. That's just where I'm at. You got to get the quarterback right. You got to beat Ohio State, got to beat Michigan State, and make a trip to Indianapolis.
But even if the next quarterback's the right quarterback, we're looking at 8-9 years to get that quarterback right the first time. And that's just crazy to me. It's crazy that it's taken that long. It's Michigan. Bring in a quarterback.
Yeah, they have all the resources. They don't have any excuse not to get this right. But regardless, Anthony, thank you so much for joining us. This was so much fun. I don't even want to go to break. Honestly, I have so many more questions, but we need to do this again, maybe next week after the Penn State game. Hopefully Michigan wins, so we have something spicy to talk about. But regardless, thank you so much for joining us. We'll catch you next week, hopefully, if you're available. Would love to catch up more. But everybody, Anthony Broome, staff writer for thewolverine.com. It was a pleasure, man. Thank you so much.
Of course, thank you. I'm sure either way we'll have something spicy to talk about. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.